My name is Mokoko Sebola from South Africa, and I am presenting this paper co-authored with me and Ms. Angelina Mamabolo from South Africa. And the title of our paper is Land Expropriation Modeling South Africa, a Consequent Impact on Food Security. This paper is structured into 4 parts like the previous one. It will present the introduction, the methodology, the results and discussion, as well as conclusion and recommendation. This paper is about a critical issue of land expropriation, which recently took place in South Africa. Since the announcement of the land expropriation without compensation in South Africa by the President Ramaphosa 2 years ago, many debates emerged and questions rose about the implementation challenges that is expected with regard to such an announcement. While others argue about the pieces of legislation in place to fairly regulate that, others are seriously concerned about whose land to expropriate, which land is going to be affected, and what will happen if the country expropriate land without compensation, not only to the South African blacks, but also to the South African white minority group, which most of them are believed to be possessing a highest percentage of land ownership. Land in South Africa is owned invariably such as by the state, private individuals, companies, and different trusts. Hence, the South African citizens are much concerned about whose land will be expropriated when that time comes, because the president has not been clear about whose land is going to be expropriated without compensation. Notably, the idea of land expropriation without compensation was accepted and supported by different political parties, such as the African National Congress, the Economic Freedom Fighters, and apart from other opposition parties which were aligned to the white capitalist class. But surprisingly, in 2021, such land reform bill could not pass in Parliament when the EFF, which was a pro-land expropriation without compensation, voted with the white capitalist classes against the ANC's proposal of such bill. The oppositions of this idea of land expropriation without compensation are concerned about the state of corruption in the country and argue that even with the expropriation that can constitutionally take effect, only those who are politically connected will enjoy benefits associated with expropriation, while the poor will continue to suffer, like we see it happening in other African countries, especially in Zimbabwe. Access to land has been identified as an action that can reduce the level of hunger and increase access to food security in the country. That is, food security can only be visible where all citizens have access to economic resources such as land that will assist them to create economic activities that can promote their standard of living. Arguably, the government's decision to expropriate land without compensation in South Africa will undoubtedly, like in any other African country such as Zimbabwe, lead to famine and much greater poverty across its own society. The methodology that is followed in this paper is conceptual in nature, in the sense that it uses literature to argue that land expropriation without compensation will threaten food security in South Africa if implemented without considering other important aspects of the value of land. And this paper, through that methodology, we conclude that the land expropriation without compensation that will not consider the threat to food security will not achieve the intended justice for the people it intends to serve in the country, especially the South African Black communities. Let us look at the literature review. Land redistribution in the country has been argued to be moving very slow, according to Bennett, Sebola, and Saola, and COSA 2016. And despite political noises made, the status quo remain unchanged. According to the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform in South Africa, 30% in 2014, 30% of land should have been redistributed by 2040. But to date, however, only 8% has been redistributed. Just when the country is still working towards correcting the imbalance of the past by distributing to the disadvantaged communities, then the issue of land without compensation gained and brought about a new focus onto a land issue in South Africa. However, it is still not known as to whether through expropriation of land without compensation, the government will be able to distribute land fairly without problems. Clearly, the expropriation of land without compensation is the government's new agenda, and it is made clear in the agenda that the approach must be done in a manner that is fair, sustainable, and strengthen the economy of the country. It is therefore evident that the government of South Africa is on a mission to strengthen land reform. However, little has been recorded on economic viability of the redistributed land through land reform programs, which has already taken place previously. As Sebola indicated in 2018, the financial models of the current distributed land by the government are failing to achieve the model of land allocation appropriately and effectively. Hence, it is argued that land expropriation without compensation in South Africa is likely to threaten food security. On the other hand, Sebola and Mamabolo 2018 have argued that the reality of land benefit from South African local communities through land model is not workable as it has been previously evidenced. The results and the discussions. Land expropriation without compensation continue to be a controversial topic for discussion in the South African political discussion, and which caught a global attention too. Few political rhetoric are concerned about how such expropriation will threaten food security in the country, while the majority are concerned about the achievement of redistributive justice from the process. It has been widely acknowledged that food security is not only a South African problem, but also remain a global challenge, which has affected many African countries to the extent that charity organizations have to intervene. South Africa, if affected by food security, is likely to be worse, since most neighboring countries, especially in the SADC and in the West and the South, the North, are dependent on its fair, stable political and agricultural economies. Evidently, not only the commercial agriculture does contribute to food security in the country, but also small-scale farmers do contribute to agricultural production in the country. Despite that, in South Africa, the land redistribution process had already created avenues for food shortages. As articulated by Sebola and Sebola 2014, numerous economically active farms had collapsed immediately after being handed to African beneficiaries for use. Although such happened, there is only little effort which the government did to resolve such a challenge, as the government only continues to boast about the number of farms that they have allocated. Land reform cannot be achieved without considering its future effect on food security. Such a political neglect can cause a hilarious economic disaster. Moreover, land reform projects are likely to be handled better in a corrupt-free environment, while our country, South Africa, is not rated as a corrupt-free country as such. The current state of affairs with land reform in South Africa, especially where farms were given to African beneficiaries through land restitution redistribution, there is no guarantee for food security. Indeed, evidence showed a decline in farm production and the potential threats for food security in many aspects. In conclusion, the paper concludes that land expropriation without compensation that will not consider threat to food security will not achieve intended justice for the people it intends to serve in the country, especially the South African blacks. The paper therefore recommended the following. 1, the country should consider the economic impact before restorative justice and find a striking balance to benefit both the country and its citizens. Secondly, the country should try to resolve land issue problem by balancing the economic imperative and the restorative justice at the same time. Thirdly, the country should adopt a feasible redistributive and restoration plan to benefit both the economy and the South African citizens. Fourthly, the country should consider food security as of primary importance before adopting any land reform programs. And finally, the country should review the capacity model used for holders of already restricted land and redistributed land. Once again, thank you, Dr. Data and your group for giving us an opportunity to participate in your conference. I thank you very much.